My name is Lynnea Golding. I'm from Advancement Resources. I'm joined here today by Rausch from Wired Production Group.
Hello, everyone.
And on vMix, we have Angie Joens from UC Davis.
Hey, Angie.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Angie. So thank you again so much for joining us. We moved from the WebEx platform to YouTube Live to give you an idea of what type of virtual event experience you might be able to have. So here's just another way that you can do a virtual event. We have our moderator, Sarah, also live with us. If you have any questions throughout this event, you can enter them in the chat window on the right-hand side. If you haven't already, you'll need to either log into YouTube or into your Gmail account to utilize the live YouTube chat. Otherwise, we also have our colleague Caleb still on that WebEx platform, and you can enter questions there. Caleb will send them over to Sarah, and she'll get them to us. So many of you actually joined us for our first What's Now event. When we talked about we're going to a virtual event, what do we do? How do we start? So thank you for that, and welcome back. We referenced actually many of the questions that you provided to us for that event when we were planning for this, so we're really excited about that. So again, welcome back. We're happy to have you with us. So before we get started, really too far into the content here, I want to describe what our roles are in the event space. So for Advancement Resources, we really focus on the creative design and direction. With our experience in the donor realm, it's really bringing you the donor perspective to an event. We look at project management. We look at the entire overall picture, logistics from the beginning to end. We do event design and flow, talking about what is that seamless experience for a donor. How do we take a donor from where they currently are in their thinking to showing them what needs to change for the organization or for this program, and then moving them to action. We also go through the entire creative development, script writing, so helping write those really powerful speeches for your speakers you've selected, video capture and editing, and logistics coordination, so your team can really focus on the donor experience, and we focus on the details of making sure the right people get on stage for a live event. The lighting and the audio and things work right. We do the rehearsals for you, and then you can focus on what that event feels like for your donors. And then our friend and colleague here, Ron, at Wired Production Group, really focuses on the technical support.
So yeah, thanks, Lynnea. And you know, in the old days, 3 months ago, we were the production arm that you would hire at your event to do all of the staging, the sound, the lights, the cameras. If you're webcasting at the same time, we would provide that services. Now, where are we in this world of virtual? We're still the production technical arm of that, and we create all the corporate event concepts, help you with what technologies you need to bring into the event. We work with the virtual engagement parameters, the platforms in which you're going to deliver the message. Today we're using YouTube, we're using vMix to bring in Angie from California. We work and integrate those platforms. If there's pre-recorded elements, we provide the pre-recorded elements section of it. We might be doing some video capture of people doing remote presentations, editing those together. And then when it comes time to do the event, we produce the event, we provide the live streaming, and then if there's any moderation or any interactivity, we provide all of those technical support as well. And so, of course, we've worked with Angie quite a bit, and so Angie's here today as well, so I'll toss it over to Angie to talk about it from the client perspective and how she's been working on some events with us and how we've taken those into the virtual world. Take it away, Angie.
You bet. Thanks. Hi, everyone, all the way from California. That's what I love about technology and working with really talented professionals like Wired Productions and Advancement Resources is they have the know-how to take something that's in my mind and turn it into reality. So from the client's perspective, right away, as soon as we went on lockdown, we really knew that we needed to find a way. It was not a good time to be asking for dollars, so it was the time for us to really focus on engagement and outreach and looking for opportunities. We were also playing for the last year or plus with these two groups our campaign launch. So we really had to take pull the reins back and take a quick half a beat and decide what we needed to do. So we joined really early on with Ron and asked, we need to get out. We've got people home. They have, less to do. They're looking for ways to engage. Why not engage with UC Davis? So we actually worked on a 6-part virtual event series and rolled out some really important topical information that we thought they'd be interested in. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go through this presentation. But we also took a big shift and started thinking about how do we not think about our campaign launch and moving forward? Do we put it on pause? And we made the bold decision to move forward, and we're doing that virtually. So I'm going to be talking about both of those opportunities. I just think the key message here is find really quality partners that can help and take your vision and make it a reality.
Thanks, Angie. It's been phenomenal going through thinking about the events that we've done together live, and then how do we make them virtual? So what types of events are we talking about? These are really any donor events. So maybe board meetings. I mean, we know so many institutions have taken their board meetings to a Zoom meeting. And who knew what Zoom was 3 months ago, right? Right. We all know what it is now. We're talking campaign launch, like Angie mentioned. How do we take that from a live event to an engaging and impactful virtual event? Maybe you have regional events that you're looking at. So town hall meetings, alumni chapter gatherings. How do you make that virtual? Also galas. Some maybe have a silent auction component or a live auction component. There are some plugins and things we'll talk about a little bit later that you might be able to use. Also, ticketed dinners and concerts. We've all seen some live virtual concerts in the last several months as we no longer can gather for things like Lollapalooza, or even state fairs are now in question. What's happening there, right? Also, tours of new facilities. I mean, anything that might be a donor-facing event is absolutely possible to do in a virtual space. You just have to think about it a little bit differently. If you think about a ribbon cutting ceremony, a 3D tour of a facility, if you can't do it in person, you can still do it virtually. So what types of virtual events are we talking about? Ron, go ahead.
So on the presentation side of it, and I like to think of this, I grew up in the television production world. So when it comes to the three kinds of things that we're talking about here, which is presentation, conference, and webinars, I look at that as saying this is like television, right? So the difference between live television or television itself and the internet is the internet allows this two-way interactivity, where television is very much just a passive event. So when we talk about the presentation side of it, it's almost like watching your favorite television show, right? So this is on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock every night or every week. This is on, and you're just passive watching that in a presentation. That's some of our pre-recorded elements that we do, pre-produced all the way, and just launch those as though they're live because they happen at a certain time and date. Then there's the conference side of things, and I'll talk a little bit more about each of these, but how they relate to television. On the conference side, I look at that as almost like a mini-series of television, right? It's too much to digest in one fell swoop. And so in a conference, we're taking that and spacing it out over a couple, 3 days or 4 or 5 days of time. And then you have the webinar thing, which is what we're doing here today. And so this is like live television. This is like your newscast or a sporting event that's happening live, and there's some pre-recorded elements as well as some live elements. The biggest shift when you go to virtual versus regular television is that two-way path that internet gives us. It gives us that ability to interact with people. It gives us the ability to get feedback instantaneously and have some sort of connection outside of just watching a television show. And so when we talk about presentations, that's what Angie talked about a little bit, and we'll talk more about that in a moment of what we're doing as far as producing a live event that was going to be a launch into a full pre-produced element that just plays. On the conference side, in the lower right there, the picture, we're going to talk about a conference that we did. So this is crazy. We had, right in the middle of this pandemic when it was first launching, we were working with a women's leadership conference here in Cedar Rapids. We had 1,500 live attendees that were going to come to the event. We also had a virtual option for those who wanted to watch it and pay for a subscription to watch it for the 2 days we were going to produce it. Well, that event was due to launch on April 7th and 8th. It could not have been a worse time because shortly after the NCAAs go away and we see, all events being canceled, they were originally hoping to do some sort of a hybrid. Maybe we can still get a few people together. But as crunch came down and we got closer to the date and the state started locking down that opportunity, we had to take the whole thing virtual. So this was a 2-day conference with national presenters from all over the country that were supposed to travel here and present live, levels of interactivity and breakout sessions, and we ended up putting together, in a matter of about 2 weeks, 2 6-hour days of content where we did many pre-recorded intros. We had a live host in the studio, happened to be somebody with the Women's Leadership who had a television background, so she was our wrapper of bringing it all together as a live host and then throwing it to the pre-produced packages, tossing it to the live presenters that were presenting from their homes. So I've got a little demo here that we'll play, and Clayton, why don't you go ahead and roll that, and then I'll kind of talk about that conference a little bit more afterwards.
Good morning and welcome. No virus is going to stop us here. Joy Bauer, be well, and thank you again for helping to make this work for us.
Thanks so much, Tiffany. Stay safe, stay sane, stay healthy.
Our speakers, while they're going to be appearing virtually, they will be online as well to take your questions following their presentations. It's really inspiring to see all of the innovation that's come out of necessity. The show must go on.
So there you see we had 1,500 people that are going to be there live. Now we had well over 2,000 people participating in the event. We were able to incorporate a social media wall, so you saw pictures of everybody watching from their homes and their kids and their dogs and everything else, so it made it a little more personable. And we were using an application when we talk about some of the wrapper things later on. We used an application called Whova, which allowed us to give all the information of who the presenters were ahead of time, gives us the agenda, who's speaking when. We used that as our interactive platform so that people could text in their questions. Even the pre-recorded people were able to still be engaged at the same time their presentation was playing. They were on Whova answering questions in real time, even though we had pre-recorded their event. And then the live keynote speakers that we did, they had the Whova app as well, and so they could interact and do that Q&A session as well. So although we couldn't be together to put this all on and have that level of networking and interactivity that we're used to seeing in a live event, we were able to accomplish the best we could on a short term to get that interactivity, get that out there, and still provide that meaningful content. The third piece that we talk about is the webinar piece. So this is kind of what we're doing here today. So this is a live event. We've shifted over to YouTube like we talked about, and the reasons for doing that is the quality of YouTube is much better, and when we wanted to show videos and graphics and live cameras and link in Angie from California, we were able to bring all of these elements together and produce this live webinar. Many of you have probably been on lots of training, even with advancement resources, where you're using webinar technologies to do that. And I think one of the projects that we first launched with Angie was the one she alluded to earlier, and I'm going to toss it her in a second to talk about those 6 series that we did and how we produced those webinars in lieu of being able to get people together remotely. So Angie, if you want to talk a little bit about the webinar series that we produced with you and Davis, give a little background on that, and then we'll show a little highlight video after you're done too.
You bet. So we have, we're getting ready for a campaign launch, as I mentioned. We have some really big ideas that we have been promoting for the last 18 months leading up to our campaign launch. So it was a perfect packaged group of people, champions who could speak eloquently. We had PowerPoint presentations that were prepared, that were very skilled speakers. So we decided to take those 6 and line it up into a 6-week series and create an experience. What we typically do is take these speakers out on the road with us, right? So we do regional events. We might take them to Seattle. We might take them to Portland. We might take them where we have concentrations of UC Davis alumni and friends and grateful clients. And, you know, we'll be lucky to get 100 people, but really engaged people to attend. When we shifted to this virtual experience, one of the most wonderful outcomes was that the numbers just started to tick up. We started to see, instead of just being able to focus in Seattle, we opened it up nationally. We promoted these to everyone, and we saw our numbers go up. So what we typically would have somewhere between 75 and 100, you know, well-placed donors, people that we were really hoping to get to know better. We were going to use it as cultivation and engagement. We were able to really think about broadening horizon. And with each week, as we moved along, our numbers grew and grew and grew. So I think our last one, we had 400 or 500 people participate, which was just so exciting for us from all corners of the country, right? The other added benefit of doing this is then we recorded them, we put them on our website and drove people to those, and the number of views, the number of opportunities, people who did watch it and thought maybe they've got, I want to forward this to my college roommate who's a farmer and might be really interested in our smart farm. The views and the shares and the things that started to happen, the numbers went up exponentially. And for us, that was our focus was just how to get some information out. But what happened by doing this virtually is we broadened our reach, and it made it there was just a really super happy and strategic byproduct of doing it virtually. So that's, I think, one of the things all of us are learning as we're doing virtual events is you get to broaden your audience. So yeah, it's been a really wonderful experience, Ron. And you saw some from the pictures. We had maybe one speaker. We focused on pre-recording all of our speakers. So when I said I've got champions to speak and that they were really great at their topic, we also need to note that everyone moved to go home at the same time in the country, and so we chose to pre-record all of our speakers because we wanted to get out of all of the ums and the ahs or the technology not working or whatever. So we worked with Ron's team to pre-record all of that in advance. Luckily we did that because I think at one point, Ron, didn't we have like a brownout or something in
during a rehearsal pre-recording.
David, and during our rehearsal. So if that would have been live, we would have lost. So I thought it was we had some really some thoughtful opportunities to really think about recording those in advance. And honestly, the champions loved the opportunity to make them look as good as possible. And then we had the live element with Q&A at the end, which was just great. So yeah, it was a really neat experience. We got in really early with Ron, and we went again with a producer that knew us and knew our people and could help us execute this. So it worked really, really beautifully.
Yeah, and we have a little highlight clip of kind of how that all came together. So Clayton, if you want to roll that, we can just give a little more background on it.
It's my added pleasure to be here today to talk with you all about Aggie Launch, something near and dear to my heart.
So, as you saw there, we were able to take those and pre-record those, have the live audiences, and I just think it was a great way to really interact with all of Angie's people, broaden that audience out there, and really expand what you could normally do in a live circumstance. Because what Angie said too is, if I'm out in Seattle, I've only got that collective audience. Now I've got an audience that's nationwide, worldwide, that we can spread the message out to. So I think for branding purposes, for exposure, for getting that information out there, it's a great platform to do that. It doesn't take the place of that live, personal connections that you have, and I think that's something we'll talk about here in a little bit, is how you can try to do some of that in a virtual world, because that's probably the biggest challenge. Although it allows us to do some of those things, there are certain elements that still are a little difficult to do, let's be honest. So With that, I'll toss it back over to you, Lynnea, and we can keep moving on.
That's right. So we're talking about live events versus virtual donor events. The picture you see here is the UC Davis Campaign Close celebration event that we did back in 2014 together. It was, I got to tell you, it was an incredible experience. One of the things that we're missing, like Ron said, is that live interaction, and we're all missing it. So let's talk about how can we move forward really logistically on the live versus virtual donor events. So some of the questions that we got from our first webinar are really about timeline and planning. How much time does it take to really produce a virtual donor event? And what I would tell you is that it takes roughly around the same amount of time. So if you think about you're planning a scholarship luncheon, you take several months to put together all the pieces that you have. Sometimes you have a shorter timeline, 6 to 8 weeks. It's possible, a little more challenging, and I know you all have experienced that. But you want to plan about the same amount of timeline to get that done. For budgeting, what does it cost? That's a great question. Of course, there are many varieties of ways to do virtual events that will impact how much it does cost. But what we can say is that it costs about 50 to 75% of the cost of a live event. So where does that come from? Well, you have no venue fees, you don't have catering, you don't have decor, all of those things that really get wrapped up into what happens with a live event. Content is far more important for a virtual event. We are all really consuming content virtually because that's really the only way to do it these days, right? So it's far more important that you have engaging stories. You have meaningful content that your donors can see why that matters. One of the things we would say is no more than 1 hour of content. We like that 45-minute to 1 hour range, and that's for real, true content delivery. So if we're doing a conference where it's multiple days, it's really breaking out those content pieces into smaller chunks. Also, when you have your subject matter experts, make sure that you have a communications professional really help craft their remarks. One of the things that we've learned is that thinking about the training that we do at Advancement Resources, when we work with academic professionals, medical professionals, we talk about how do you tell your story? What is the problem, the promise? Let's talk about the why. Why is it important? Let's do that first. Tell your donor why this matters, and then go into the how we're going to do this. So all of those components, all of those philosophies that we utilize already in content development, they still apply. It's just in a virtual environment. Engagement and interaction is very important. We'll talk a little bit about that more in the platforms area. One of the really cool things that happens in live events is you get to really feel the energy, the excitement from all the people that are there. You've got maybe the band, the students, you've got the energy that's happening. You really want to follow up with your events. Make sure that it lives far beyond that one-time experience. So one of the things that Angie mentioned is that they sent out the links. They recorded the content for the big ideas, and they sent out links. So we've got an image here on the right-hand side of the slide that's actually the big ideas email. They said, click to watch. You can go see that virtual event, and you can experience it. You can forward it to your friends and family. You can get far more reach with that content. So
can I jump in here for a second,
yes.
Lynnea?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things we did with the follow-up plan, we were really strategic about this. While we invited a much larger, broader audience, those that attended received a follow-up email saying, thank you so much for participating. It was great to have you. And then we put together just a really short, tight little video with just had snapshots of each of the 6 events that we did. From there, then we sent that out to everyone that participated and said, thanks. If you would like to go and revisit any of these, here's the link to our website. What we also did, and we do this after every event, anyone that couldn't join us or that we invited that couldn't, we sent a note out like, gosh, so sorry we missed you. What a bummer. We know everyone's schedules couldn't match up. But if you still would like to see what we did, this website. So we had the opportunity to passively give people on their own time and their own way to go and check these out. And again, that's going to help us, that's helping us drive up our numbers of who's getting to see this. So the investment that we made up front in developing these 6 events is just continuing, we're continuing to get ROI from our events. So I just wanted to add that in, that I thought it was just, that's why I think up after an event is just so critical.
I think that's the big difference between live events and virtual events. The virtual events, because we're recording it as it's happening, it has some longevity and legs to it. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes gets cut out of budgets realistically when we do a lot of live events, is whether or not we record it, edit together highlight pieces, or pull out different presentations. I mean, all of that's always been available, but a lot of times that might get lost in the budgeting side of things, and that's kind of the first thing to go. Well, in a virtual world, you have all that because we record it. And so you do get much longer usage out of this for a completely different markets, re-edit, repackage, because it's all recorded. So I think that's one of the big benefits, that at least when you're losing some things, it does give you a broader reach and gives you some longevity to use these things longer. So
that's right. And if you've been if you've really joined for many of the Advancement Resources virtual webinar series, that's actually one of the things that we've been doing every single week when we do our weekly webinar. We record it, post it on the website. That's exactly why, because there's sometimes people that can't join that live. So if you're doing a presentation, maybe it's like the premiere event, but you can have it so that it launches at a specific date, but then it's available on demand.
Well, let's be honest, the whole world wants everything on demand now.
That's right.
You know, nobody watches live TV anymore. It's all Netflix, when I want to watch it, how I want to watch it, at what time of the day. And so, you know, we need to adapt to that as well, right? Because that's just, as I watch my kids and they watch a television show that we watched last night, they're like, hey, I want to watch that cartoon again. That was on live TV, and they just don't understand that. So that generation is figuring out, I want it when I want it, and I don't want to watch commercials, and I want to go right now. And you know, this allows you to kind of move in that direction too with these virtual events. So.
Hey, Angie, Ron, and Lynnea. We had a great question come through. Can you guys explain how you captured who attended, so registrations, and how you got those names?
So Angie, I'll let you talk about what you have, because you have something in place, and then I'll talk about it from a broader view.
We do. We use iModules, and that's how people RSVP through that, and it goes right into our database, so we're able to capture who RSVP'd for specific events. There's other ones like Constant Contact. You can do it the old-fashioned way and just have people phone in, and but as long as it's uploaded into your database, that's how you're tracked. But we happen to use iModules.
And I think there's a lot of colleges, universities, hospitals, a lot of different groups, companies have their own registration platforms. I know Advancement Resources use it for all of their, you know, web conferences and things too. There are systems, if you do not have a system already in place, I mentioned Whova is one. There's a bunch of other different ones out there that do the same kind of thing. Right? So you can have these platforms where you can use it as a registration platform. You can use it as a paywall if for some reason you're doing an event where you want people to pay to come to the event. You can capture that data. So I've done some events where we've done it through Boxcast, and so with the Women's Leadership Conference that we did, everybody registered. If they were doing the virtual side of it, they could do it through Boxcast, or they could use it through Whova. So we had a combination there because we were doing two different things. But those platforms can give you full data reports on who's there, who registered, their contact information, so that, again, you can follow up with them post. So there's a lot of options if you don't already have something. What we found with a lot of our customers is many of them use the same registration platforms that they would use if they were doing a live event. So they have it in place. Like Angie, you've been using that platform for a lot of your events already. And so I think if there's something in place, we don't reinvent the wheel. But if you do have an event and you don't have that available to you, you know, we can help provide that with some of these third-party apps.
And if you have a donor database that has a plugin available, so let's say you're using Blackbaud and you want to investigate whether you can do something like that for registrations, you can look at that, talk to your vendors, see what might be available for you. All right, and then again, live versus virtual events. Just want to go back to that follow-up and how important follow-up is. It's important for live events to make sure that, again, the event lives long after the experience itself. Your content is relevant, it's got shelf life, you can repurpose it for the future. And for virtual events, also very important. So make sure that you have a follow-up plan in place before the event itself. One of the things that we did just last fall it seems like years ago, Butler University had a campaign launch event. We had the great pleasure of working with them. And immediately following the event, we took the content that we'd captured during the event, during the rehearsals and things like that, and we created this, what we call the Butler Hype video. So for people who were at the event, they get to feel the energy and the excitement of that event again. If they weren't able to attend, they could see this snapshot of what it was like. So let's go ahead and roll that.
Thank you for all your support and dedication to Butler University. So with that, go Dogs! Butler Beyond will blend the very best of our past with our highest aspirations for the future.
I thought it was absolutely incredible. Tonight's event was awesome. Let's take Butler beyond!
This was an incredible event, and you can just feel the energy of it, right? And I got to tell you, this song, it gets stuck in my head very quickly because it was one of our editors, one of Ron's team editors, working on this with me from midnight to 2 a.m. and we got it out for the client to send out by noon the next day. So that was really exciting.
Yeah, a couple interesting things about that. We also streamed that entire event live.
Yeah.
But what I think, as I watch that, I just sit here and go, wow, all that's gone right now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, look at those huge crowds. Look at everybody hugging and laughing and dancing and interacting, and all of a sudden now it's like, when do we get to go back to that? You know, I don't know when we get to go back to that. I will tell you that being in this industry and watching the trends going forward, I think it's going to be quite a while before that comes back in its full capacity. Even though we see states opening up, and even in the state of Iowa, they lifted this 50% capacity yesterday, but I still, at the same moment, the state fair cancels. At the same moment, you know, we were booked to do Taste of Chicago and the Air and Water Show in Chicago, and those were announced as canceling. Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to be a long trail before we can actually feel comfortable, and people feel comfortable about coming out to these kind of events. And so we need to really adapt to this and long for that to get back to those events. And I think we'll always be in this situation where we'll be able to do a hybrid type situation where we'll be able to get back to those live events but then continue to stream them at the same time. So I think that's here to stay. And I also think we're building a good case that you can reach a much broader audience. Mm-hmm. And when you do the webcasting, you get the recordings, you can repurpose the footage and do more things with it. So now I think we'll just kind of launch into platforms. So what are the pros and cons? What do we have for platforms out there? What do we use? People often ask us, you know, what do you guys want? What's the best platform out there? And the short answer is it depends. It depends on a lot of things. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you which is the perfect. Now, in every instance, we work a lot with what the clients already have. It goes back to that same registration question of like, if you already have, in the case of working with Angie and her team, they had the Zoom webinar conferencing system that we used for their first events. Today, we're using YouTube, and we're also using vMix as a platform that brings it into us. A lot of what depends on the platform, what we use to dictate what platform is what is the quality you want to put out. Today we're using YouTube because we wanted, as a production company, we want to put out the highest quality. So we went with YouTube because it gives us the nice, clean, crisp pictures that we want, where some of the other ones are more compressed and they choke on the videos and it doesn't lip sync as often, all these challenges.
If I could jump in there,
Yeah.
one of the things that we've learned, so Advancement Resources uses platforms like Adobe Connect and WebEx, and if you've attended any of our training seminars, you know that. What we've found is that to show the video segments that we utilize in our training, we actually have to compress them to a low bit rate. So they still look good on the platform, but then it eliminates a whole lot of that streaming quality issues that Ron is talking about. Now for this virtual event, we wanted you to get the feeling of that higher bit rate, really HD quality that YouTube typically provides. One of the other things that we've talked about is that if you're doing a Zoom video conference, the amount of bandwidth that you're taking by receiving video from attendees and pushing video out, whether it's the cameras on us or the cameras on us and our presentation, it just takes so much more, and then you're requiring more bandwidth on the user's end. So thinking about the user experience, and then also one of the other things I wanted to mention about the WebEx to YouTube live change we did for today is that our WebEx events have a limited number of attendees at 1,000 people. Right. So thinking, we don't know how many people are going to show up. We would love to have it unlimited. So that's another thing that we thought about when we made this switch for you today.
And I think with Zoom too, I mean, who's heard of Zoom 6 months ago, right? Nobody heard of Zoom. Now it's like Kleenex. It's everybody knows, you're on a Zoom call, we're doing a Zoom call. My kids, we have 7 kids at home. All of them are on Zoom at the same time doing their schoolwork and their practices and everything else. The great thing about Zoom is there's no instructions, right? You just launch it, it happens, and you put a lot of the control into the user's hands, which is good and bad. Right? So, I mean, we've seen the Saturday Night Live skits, right? And we see all these where, people forget to mute their mics and they're doing the funny takes on all that. Well, that's true. I mean, how many times have you gotten on a Zoom call and somebody doesn't know how to turn their camera on, or they don't know how to use the chat function? Well, all that control is in their hands. And part of what putting on a good program is taking some of that control away, where we control the look, where we control the interface, where we control whose mics are on when we want them on. And so that is one of the things we look at when we're doing an event, is how much control do we want to have? What's the level of quality? Obviously, other things we look at is what type of content do we want to deliver? Is it more passive content, where we're just broadcasting out and we maybe need limited interaction coming back? Are we doing something that we need a bunch of breakout rooms? And so we have to look at maybe multiple calls using things like Google Classroom or Zoom, where we can have a conference room set up, or with Microsoft Teams, where we can have breakout rooms. And so depending on that content will help us shift what platforms we're going to use. What level of interaction and engagement do we need? Are we doing a lot of polling? Are we doing a lot of chat sessions? Do we want people to be able to ask questions live, or is a chat function good? Or do we use a third-party application to do some of these things? And then when we look at, in some cases, we're using a combination of multiple platforms coming into it. Well, that can get really complicated for the end user if I send out multiple links to say, this is here, this one, your breakout rooms are in Zoom, your main general session we're going to do on YouTube. That can get very confusing to the people at home that are trying to engage in the conference or engage in the event. And so we talk about these wrapper options. And what are those wrapper options? Those are programs, with a third-party application. Again, I keep going back to Whova. It's one we've worked with, where you can bring all of those things in there. There's multiple out there. We're doing lots of demos. I think we have 3 or 4 scheduled in the next week with these companies that are popping up that are basically putting that package all together so that I can use YouTube, I can use Zoom, I can use Google, I can use all these different ones and integrate those on the front end and just have one place that's home base for everybody to come back to. Like today, I'll punch up the camera in here, and we're using it out of our studio here. So what we have is we're all set up here. We've got our monitors in front of us. We're actually injecting this into YouTube, right? And we're bringing in vMix at the same time. So we can act as a hub to bring all of these outside sources in and then put them out. So if you look up in the control room, in order for us to do this, this is our staff behind the scenes to bring this all together. We've got Lance in there mixing the audio so that we can hear Angie in our ears and Angie can hear us. We've got Clayton in there playing the videos and switching between cameras. Eric's in there making sure that the webcast is solid, checking on attendance. We've got Morgan in there. Morgan's in there watching the broadcast at the same time to see if there's any challenges or issues. Sarah's in another room who's doing the interactive with as far as monitoring the Q&A. So all of these things kind of come together to make this a seamless transaction for you guys to view. And so that is not unlike doing a live event. When you do a live event, you have the same thing. You have a whole production crew back here that's deciding what's on the screens, what's playing when, whose graphics are coming up. We're taking some of that out of the control of either our moderators by doing some pre-recordings and pre-produced things, or we're, in this case, pushing all the graphics and everything here so that we're not have to doing screen shares and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of variety in there. It's not a hard, fast answer, but we try to work with our clients to make sure that we utilize what they've already been paying for, if at all possible. Don't reinvent the wheel. But then what add-on things can we do? And that kind of takes us to some of that interaction things. So one of the biggest losses in going virtual is that ability to network, that ability to hang out, the discussions you have at dinner, at the cocktail reception, at the dance, all of those kinds of things. So how can we preserve as much as we can to do that? And I'll give you a couple examples. So I'm working with a client out that's a big fundraising event for a Kentucky Derby themed event, and they raise money to give back in that area of the country, and so they're doing this, and normally it's a live event, right? They have a lot of people come. And so what we're doing is on the front end, we're going to have some pre-produced elements we're going to send out to them. So this is a combination of not only using technology, but also what can you put in the hands of the people that are participating. So we're going to send out mint julep kits, and we're going to record a bartender in their home or here at the studio teaching everybody how to make the perfect mint julep for the theme. And so that's a way to get people interacting, taking participation in something that we can't do live in person, which is all get together and have our mint juleps. So that's going to be a pre-produced element, allows some sort of interaction for those people to do that. They also do a thing where they have a hat contest. So everybody gets on their big hats and do the whole thing like you do at the Kentucky Derby.
Are you going to wear one?
No, I'm not getting it on. Maybe a derby is close. So we're going to have everybody submit all their photos ahead of time. They'll vote on that, and we'll produce a piece within that 30, 45-minute program that brings up everybody, doing the hats and everybody sending in those photos, and then we'll present the award winner for that, somewhere towards the end of the program. So thinking out of the box of how do you still engage people. We've done things with, gaming is a huge thing that's coming up. How do we do some gamification things on the front end, whether that's trivia, whether that's taking a themed game that we've all seen on television, making that an interactive piece. We've had things where we've taken a band, and we just worked with Transamerica 2 weeks ago where we had a national artist out in Nashville perform from their home, and we were able to text in and people were watching and they could shout out requests. And so this is a live event that could be during a cocktail reception where you can shoot in your requests to your band and they play them in real time for you. We've done it where we're working with a client who has a bunch of restaurants that usually partake, 25 restaurants that cook all the meals for this big fundraising event. Now we're working with Grubhub and some of these food delivery things, and we're going to have the food delivered at a certain time to their homes. We're going to have a band playing live, so that's going to be on the screen so they can watch this band while they eat their dinner, and then we launch into the program. So those are, and people are even doing this too at home, right? On your own level, you're doing, hey, Friday night is, cocktail night for everybody. Hang out with my friends and family. I can't go see them, but we're all going to sit and have drinks together and talk. So it's the same kind of thing of thinking out of the box. And I know, Angie, you've done a few things and you're contemplating a few things as well. So if you want to give some of your ideas and what you're looking at for some of your events, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. One idea I'm really proud of, and I'm excited that my team has come up with this. So we have a wine program at UC Davis, #1 in the world, and
it's amazing. Yes,
have a groundbreaking. It is pretty awesome. So we have a groundbreaking coming up for the Center, and we're the donor is the main named donor is older. We're ready to keep moving, right? And we want to get this building dedicated. So we're doing a virtual groundbreaking, and then VIPs, others given, and we have worked with an alumni winemaker who has an amazing champagne, and we shipped champagne to all of our VIP donors who gave the campaign. So when the point in the program comes, the chancellor is going to lift a glass of this same champagne. Everyone will have their champagne would have received in advance of this event and asked to have it ready, and then we'll all be able to together the actual celebration of this groundbreaking. I mean, that's one way we're doing it. I've just been hearing some really neat ideas nationally and even locally. There's a regional private K through 6, I think, did a fundraiser, and they had a theme. It was a fabulous 40s theme, and they had people. They sent kits to people so they could decorate their space. And then there was a competition about who was the, look, just sort of like the hat competition. But because it was local, they then, during the event, made it interactive, and you could vote for the people who had the best costume. And then they had DoorDash or people locally on their staff, then when they selected the winner, deliver the actual gift or the award to the person's home. Now, no one was expecting that, but their doorbell rings, and then they get these, fabulous prizes that they won because of this. I just love the fact that people are just thinking differently about how to interact, whether it's a VIP room during a big event and you have, an opportunity. I love the idea of the band run. I'm stealing that for the camp. Think of an opportunity to do something like that too. I think that's sort of the beauty, is that everyone is just getting so creative about finding ways to interact and making things. I love the whole gamification of things too. We're doing some of that as well. So yeah, I think those are some of the ideas that I've been hearing that I'm really excited about.
Well, and I think too, it's, I don't need to focus so much on the technology. Our job is also help come up with these creative ideas that are outside the technology. So it's those personal gifts that go to the house. It's that interactivity. It's the meals. It's the entertainment side of it. I think it's beyond just saying, stream this stuff. It's like we got to think as event planners, you're going to have all kinds of ideas too, because you're used to those kind of the tchotchkes that everybody gets, the free gifts, the giveaways, the prizes. It's just thinking about how do you do that on a different scale? How do you distribute that on a different scale versus everybody in one place? But I do think it gets outside of that technology. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I wanted to add one point, because you brought up event planners, and it made me think of how proud I am of my own event planners at UC Davis. So they have to spend the majority of their time during a typical event, a live event, really focusing on the logistics, right? The flowers, the seating charts, who gets vegan meals, who doesn't, who, what's the decor going to look like? What linens are we going to use? What kinds of invitations should be sent? That kind of thing. Now they're really not getting the opportunity to do that. So they are now getting the opportunity to really think about the experience, the program, the messaging. What is it that the donor should feel by the time they're done? How are there ways to wrap things around the event that will make it as meaningful of an experience as possible? They're actually getting this cool opportunity to sort of pull back from the details that make something super special, right, at the event, and think differently about it. And it's been really, I'm so proud of my folks. They've been really rallying around coming up with interesting and innovative ideas to be able to do that. So it's a out of lemons make lemonade, right? They're finding ways to further their skill set and develop new skills, and I'm really proud of them. So these events, this pandemic, all of this has given there's some positives that are coming out of it too.
Exactly right. Yeah, and so many event planners are really facing that same really transition from just creating an event to creating a strategic event. So let's talk about what does it look like to really plan for success. So one of the things, of course, Angie just mentioned, perfect segue, Angie, is create that engaging content. Again, our donors, ourselves, we are consuming so much more digital content. It's so much more important that it's engaging today than it was, 3-4 months ago. It's always been important to have good content, but making sure that we stick to the message that, if it was just me talking for 45 minutes, it wouldn't be that exciting. But since we've got 3 of us and we've got other things to look at, it gives you a little bit of variety. make sure that you design the experience. So it's not just click on this link and you get there, but what goes around that experience? What is that wraparound that we were just talking about? So whether it's getting a fancy invitation with a mojito kit in the mail, a delivered dinner, what does that look like? What does it feel like? Think about it from the donor perspective, because we love going to events and seeing what's happening and seeing where we're headed as an organization. How can we really make it an experience and not just another video call? And that's what we're up against. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. So we rehearsed before this because, as you saw, you got a live shot of the studio of what we're doing at this moment. This is not pre-recorded, although we do love the idea of pre-recording and really controlling what your audience sees. We are fully live today, but make sure that you do rehearsals. It's just as important for a virtual event as it is for a live event. Sometimes I would say even more important, really understanding your platform, going through the technical issues, making sure your presenters know their content. We want to support seamless delivery. Make sure you've got a great partner who can help with that. Make sure you have experts on your side so that you can focus on what is that experience for the donor, what does the follow-up look like, and really we can handle the technical portion of it for you. Make sure that you promote your virtual event. Get the right people there at the right time. If it's a time and a place, so let's say you log on to YouTube Live at this time for this premiere, that's awesome. Make sure that you promote it ahead of time so people know where to go. If you have a change in platform like we did for this one, you send out the link ahead of time so people can log in and get there. We also, again, have Caleb still on WebEx fielding any questions over there, so we've got both covered. Make sure that you publicly thank your sponsors. So for me, we don't have any sponsors today, but I do have great friends and colleagues around Rausch and Angie Joens, so thank you so much for joining me today. And make sure that you can repurpose your content. Again, we are recording this so we can send this out to all of you later on. Another thing that I did want to mention is we have created a guide for virtual events. You will all get this as an attachment to an email or a downloadable form, and this will help you kind of think about what virtual events you were looking at. It really talks about all the things that we've discussed today. So this is our plan for success.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to this too, and I think it's important, we mentioned it a couple of times, is just the length of the program and the content. And I know it gets harder in the conference settings where you're used to putting on a 6-8 hour conference. So we're working with clients to break those into maybe multiple days in 2-hour chunks or 3-hour chunks that give us breaks. But when it comes to some of these other events, keeping those in that hour, hour and a half at the longest, but then try to keep it engaging too, where we're mixing up pre-recorded elements, multiple presenters, visuals, all those things that stimulate, and keep you engaged throughout the process. So I would encourage that, just to make sure that when you're planning those events that it's not just one presenter after another with PowerPoint slides. Try to inject some videos, some stories, make it interactive. Do the things that make the time pass by. So.
And if you can, depending on the platform you're using, check out breakout rooms. You can have specific subject matter experts in a variety of breakout rooms where people can join those and then come back to the main event. One of the things is now we're spending so much more time in front of our computer screens. It's very important that we take breaks. So much more important that you take 5-10 minutes built into an experience so you can just step away.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. And that takes us to the end of our prepared remarks. Let's see if we have any questions. I know Sarah and Caleb are standing by.
Hi, guys. Yes, we have a lot of great questions coming through. So we'll start with, what are your thoughts about making virtual events only available to highest level donors versus opening to any and every supporter?
Angie, maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
I'm happy to. For our campaign launch, it was going to be for 1,000 people live, and they were going to be our top donors, our top prospects. Very typical. I've been doing this for 30 years, and that is how you launch a campaign. You have the best people with their butts in seats at your event to tell them all about, to say thank you and get inspired to, publicly launch the campaign. We were able to sell this to our chancellor, who is super innovative, and said, you know what, we now have the opportunity to go broad, to invite donors of all sizes, shapes, and any level of giving. And we're doing that. Like, we're really, really excited about this because it hasn't really been done this way. We've not thought about it this way. Typically, we think about those donors that we really want to give the largest gifts to the campaign at a launch, but now we're going really big and broad. Some people will do community events and involve, let people know about the event. This is our opportunity to go. We're going all the way down to, I think, donors who've given $250 or more during the campaign. But if others learn about it and want to attend, we're not going to say no. The more the merrier. And I think that's got my leadership really, really excited because he wants to know about UC Davis and everyone to know about this campaign.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the other option that you might have is we have a hospital that we're working with who is doing small, intimate donor Zoom calls, basically. So what that means is the hospital CEO is actually providing an exclusive experience, an exclusive look into this new facility that is opening. So that virtual tour that I mentioned could be one of your options. They've decided that they want to take a specific level of donors for that particular facility and it's almost like a dinner with the CEO. So they're going to have 15 to 20 people on this conversation, and it will be an interactive video call. So the participants can actually ask the CEO questions. The CEO can directly answer those questions. That will not have any pre-recorded content. It is a live conversation. So I think a lot of it depends on the objectives of the event. So if you're looking at building an event, make sure that you've got your objectives clear and concise so you understand and you can communicate what is the purpose of this event. Is this an exclusive look into what we're doing? Is this a public campaign launch? Is this a smaller gala? Is this a scholarship impact type of event? So looking at what you're trying to accomplish and how you want that message to come across. If you do have high-level donors that you want to feel that really exclusive experience, that VIP kind of setting, you can certainly do that. So the really cool thing about this is there is no wrong answer. We have so many different options now that we're going virtual, even more than we had just a couple months ago.
Right.
Great. And then another one is webinar fatigue. What are your thoughts on some events to engage donors and their advisors with the webinar fatigue that many are experiencing?
That's the big challenge, right? Because everybody is stuck at home, everybody's caught up on their Netflix, everybody's watching. Every meeting they have with their colleagues at work is all virtual. I think that, excuse me, I think that's a short-term thing, I hope, as people migrate back into their workplaces. But I think part of that is making it engaging. That goes back to what I'm talking about, of as many different variety you can. Try to keep it shorter, build that content. I often think of this as like mining for gold. There's a lot of times when we start creating a video project, and during that we get, hours and hours of footage. Angie comes back to me and says, oh my God, here's all the great stuff we have, and it's 20 minutes. I'm like, Angie, you said you wanted a 3-minute video. And so we just sit there and squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it until we get the gold, and we get down to that 3-minute video, right?
That's right.
And so it's the same kind of thing of, really get the quality content to make that to the point, concise. Get those gold nuggets out there, because I think that's what will keep people engaged. And
another thing I would add to that is make sure that you're innovating. Try to find some new and different ways to do things. So again, today we're on YouTube Live. It's something different that Advancement Resources has not done before. And so we made this switch, and it's an exciting new way to engage with us. It looks different. It feels different. So think about that too. What are some of the new things that are coming up? We really try to stay on the cutting edge, so making sure that we know what technology is available. Really thinking, again, from the Advancement Resources perspective, the content. What is it and how can we deliver it in a new and exciting way? So really trying to switch it up so it's not just another webinar, not just another video call. Make something exciting. Make it engaging. Make it something that your donors want to talk about for a very long time after the event. I mean, I got to tell you, that is some of the stuff that we're doing with UC Davis. Angie has amazing ideas, and bringing those to life is something that no one will forget.
Hopefully.
All right, we are about at the end of our time. Any final questions there, Sarah?
Just a good question that came through. You guys have mentioned a lot of great platforms, but do you have one that's really good for that intimate setting, a true conversation that you found works best?
A true conversation. From my perspective, depending on the size of your audience, I believe a video call, if that's possible, if you have a very small group of people, so that would be a Zoom video call, would be the best bet. So for platform, you can use Zoom for that. You can use AnyMeeting has
Google
that.
does
Google
that.
Meet has that. I mean, something with a face-to-face video conversation, I think, really provides that intimate experience. Now, the really cool thing about this is because we're doing so much virtually, our platform providers are now really pushing the envelope to say, what is the new and exciting thing I can do?
They're changing
They're
constantly.
changing
Every day
all
there's
the
updates
time.
that comes up because this is becoming more and more prevalent for everyone. So
Even-
there's always new features.
Even what we talked about 3 weeks ago, there have been so many changes with Google Meet and with what YouTube Live is now able to do. So things are changing constantly. There's no one good answer. Unfortunately, there's no silver bullet.
Yeah, I think you're right with the Zoom and everything. Small, intimate kind of things. I think if you're looking at flexibility and having that intimacy, you can give up some of the things like quality, because that's some of the things that you sacrifice in some of these. But it's a matter of what it is you want to do. I think everybody's being pretty forgiving today on quality. I mean, everybody's shooting cell phone footage. It's all over. Anything's acceptable to put out there. Obviously, we try to, as professionals, we're trying to push hard to keep everything at this broadcast quality level and make it look good and clean, so it's less options of, points of failure in it. However, that being said, I do think in some of these smaller settings, we're doing it with Zoom, with some of those intimate things like you're talking about, and I think that works as a good platform. And like you said, there's other ones. Microsoft does it too. With Teams, you can do some of those things that work well with small groups. Google is doing that. Any one of those, depending on what you have or what you have to pay for, some of those are free platforms too. So.
One of the things we would say, though, is if you're using a free platform, make sure that it is password protected or it is a private or unlisted link. So we used an unlisted link today for this YouTube Live. And making sure you don't get some of those Zoom bombs that we've heard about where people come into your Zoom meeting and start broadcasting things you don't want them to share.
Harder to do on a platform like YouTube.
It is.
And when we funnel things through our studio, we're filtering that before it goes out. So we can maybe see some of those things too. And then, go away from it and stay with where we are using different platforms. So
that's right.
Anyways.
Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Angie, really appreciate you being here with us. Ron, thanks for hosting us in the studio. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You will get a follow-up email on Monday with the recording of this presentation, and you'll also get, like I said, this virtual event guide to just help you think about some of those other things as you move forward in your virtual events. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Angie.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.
See you later.